Curiosity's not a sin, Harry, but you should exercise caution.
It's a time strap. You're fraternizing with the enemy.
There's the Cruciatus curse.
And we'll celebrate a boy who was kind and honest and brave and true, right to the very end.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We're doing chapter 24, Rita Skeeter's Scoop. I feel like that's a tongue twister a little bit. We have Anna back with us.
Hey everyone.
So this is a surprisingly loaded chapter. I think we both had more notes on this chapter than I...
Definitely. I got a lot more out of this chapter than I was anticipating.
Yeah, for sure. So before we get into the chapter, we have a couple of shout-outs. I just wanted to give an international shout-out of sorts.
Shocker for you.
I know, right? It's so not me. But we have recent listens from Fiji, the Bahamas, Panama, and Pakistan.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy, right?
That's awesome.
So our voices have been heard in all of those places. But we also want to thank our listeners from Belgium, the United Kingdom, Germany, Czech Republic, Canada, and all of the others. But we're getting a lot of listens from those specific countries. So thank you so much for listening. And it's really cool to think that, we're heard.
That's weird to think.
Yeah. If you are listening to this, let us know where you're from. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram and, interact with us. That's the best. And we love hearing from all of you. I think you have a special shout out.
Guys, I have a shout out, a personal shout out. I just want to thank Josh, I'm apparently his favorite guest. I feel so special. So thank you. You're the coolest.
We are building up Josh, who's one of my students at the high school that I work with. And it's very great. And we're very thankful for him listening to all the episodes.
Clearly has great taste.
As Anna has built him up, I will surely knock him down. I just recently beat him in a game of one-on-one.
Rude.
And he had to write me a dearest apology for slandering my basketball talents that I have now posted in my room for all to see.
Honestly, I think the reason I'm probably his favorite guest is because I yell at you and come at you the most. And I'm quite proud of that, if that is the reason. So
that's fair, and you're probably going to do it on this chapter, so we'll see. But thank you, Josh. Thank you, everybody around the world, for listening. We really, really appreciate it. So getting on to the actual chapter, Rita Skeeter's Scoop. There's a lot that happens. We start off with Ron trying to dodge arguments with Hermione, learning really quick about when to choose his battles, which is great.
Oh, okay. I don't know that he's quite learning anything yet.
He's trying.
I think he's just biting his tongue because he just doesn't want to argue again so quickly.
Fair enough.
But also, I feel like it's real easy to hate on Ron. Because, Aaron mentioned a couple of his moments in the past two episodes, which weren't great chapters for Ron, that, sometimes he's a little immature, doesn't come across great. And I was just thinking about it. So Ron is the one person of the trio who grew up in the Wizarding world.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, I know, obviously, throughout the book, mudblood is a term that comes up. There's a lot of biases towards Muggle-borns. But are they really even more lucky in a way that we don't talk about very much? Because they just come into the Wizarding world with a sense of wonder. They don't have built in the biases and the knowledge of the stereotypes and all these things that Ron grew up with. Mm-hmm. And let's be real, we're all human. We all have, biases and prejudices, whether we try and fight against them or not. But if we were to flip around and, follow Hermione around, because I feel like Hermione comes across, the strongest of the three of them and, her...
maturity.
Yeah,
yeah.
Which obviously is just a fact.
Right.
But if we followed her around the Muggle world, would she maybe not come across as great as she comes across in her interactions with Ron?
I'll go one further. Her being a Muggle-born, does she take her Muggle-born biases, whatever they may be, into the magical world?
Okay, yeah.
Is that a thing? So, not that she has any, we don't really know.
But it's very easy for her to say, isn't this just more bigotry, all the hatred against werewolves, against giants? Whereas Ron, I'm not saying she's wrong, because obviously she's not. But it's easier for her to see that. And like you said, she's coming in with her Muggle-born, people being prejudiced against her.
I think it's an interesting question. I think Hermione, the way she's written at least, shows you that she is otherworldly mature for her age. And she even shows that in other ways, like what I just brought up, of maybe some of the Muggle things that might trickle into the magic world. For instance, like her and Krum, that's an international combination, and Muggles might have some border issues or whatever have you that might cause problems. She doesn't seem to have any of that, and she's like, True. International magical cooperation, yay! And that's fine, and that's great. So I don't know.
I mean, obviously, I don't think Hermione's walking around the Muggle world with a whole bunch of awfulness. Right. But it was just the first time I have ever thought about it that way. Is like if we were to flip it around.
Do you think hers would be superficial? Like if
yes.
Quick answer. I didn't even have to give an example, but okay.
I mean, I think if you were to talk to any female, they would have responded just as quickly.
Fair. That's totally fair. I don't know. We didn't see a whole lot of her like judging other people's like dresses at the Yule Ball. I guess we didn't spend a whole lot of time with her.
Because they're dress robes.
Yeah. It would have been great if she had a snarky comment about his like Ron's dress robes.
Oh, that would be funny. It would. But
I mean, we find out here that she had to use Sleek Easy's hair potion.
Yes.
But she thought it was...
the whole bottle, right?
Yeah, she thought it was too much work to do like on an everyday basis.
Sure.
I know you had a whole lot on Ron. Did you have anything else on the Ron thing?
No, that was really it. I mean, it'd be so easy to hate Ron if he makes some real not great comments. But it's also so easy to love him.
I mean, early in these books, there's a lot that we've kind of pointed to, because he was awful to Hermione in book 1. He was not great towards Lupin at the beginning of book 3.
Honestly, I think it's just our maturity. We didn't think those things were wrong when we were 13 reading them. I mean, we didn't think they were great, but it's hitting different.
I think when I read them, and I put myself, and I've noticed that difference too, a lot of the takes that I've had on this podcast come because I didn't have those takes when I read these books the first time.
Right.
Or the third time, or the fifth time. It's now that I'm doing this podcast, and I'm looking at this from like an objective third party, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird, or wow, this is really gearing you towards a certain thought.
Yeah.
Whereas where I read them the first couple of times, I'm reading it through Harry's lens. Mm-hmm. So everything I'm interpreting like I'm Harry, or in that situation. So Ron, being particularly immature at the ages of 11 through 14, I get that because I was a boy from 11 to 14 who like...
That's what I mean. Like, it's so easy for us as 34-year-olds to be like, oh my gosh, Ron, that is rough right there. But like, weren't we all kind of rough at that age?
Yes.
I said some stuff, did some stuff, not proud of.
Absolutely. And now as adults, we're trying to like help the younger kids with like, you shouldn't be saying that, or you shouldn't be like, come on.
Exactly.
So, yes, I think it is important. Like, we can critique and poke a little bit, but yeah, they're young kids, which we still have to like remember. But anyway, there's a couple other things that happen. I'll get through a couple of them in quick succession, and then we can kind of double back and talk about them.
Okay.
We have a interim care of magical creatures teacher. We get Rita Skeeter article that's inflammatory, shocking. We get a Krum mention. We get a Ludo Bagman mention, as we get a whole scene in the Three Broomsticks that's just explosive, to say the least. And then we get a scene at Hagrid's where Albus shows up. So, do you want to go back to the care of magical creatures and dig into our new, I guess, substitute?
Professor Grubbly Plank?
Yes. First of all, students are shocked because they're coming right out of break. They don't know anything. And then this teacher, I feel this is another circumstance where reading it through Harry's eyes, I'm like, yeah, fire these questions at this new professor. As an adult, I'm
we had the
like,
same
kid,
thought.
what are you talking about?
No, I had the same thought. Like, I remember being so annoyed that she wouldn't give us any information about Hagrid, and like, how dare she not tell Harry Hagrid's... And then I'm like reading it, and I'm like, yeah, no, it's inappropriate for Harry to think that she would tell... Like, it would be bad and inappropriate if she were to tell Harry anything.
100%.
I would go so far as to say Grubbly Plank is probably the most professional teacher that Hogwarts sees during our tenure of reading.
I wouldn't disagree with you at all. I'd only say that she only gets so much.
No, I know, I get that.
But in that so much,
I'm just
you're
gonna
right.
say, like,
You're right.
it's clearly a good lesson. She keeps her professionalism, like, compared to teachers that we see for just as, I mean, like, Pomfrey, Pince, we don't get much time with either of them. And I can
Vectra or
already
anything
tell
like-
you
yeah.
that, like, she's more professional than either of them.
I like the lesson, the unicorn lesson. Solid, seems to be age appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I like the description of the unicorn. So white that the snow around it looked gray.
Yeah.
Golden Hooves prefers women, so they take all of the girls in the class up towards the unicorn. But even with that, she still makes sure that
to the boys.
Yeah.
Notices when they're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So shows a really good grasp of the classroom dynamic. She apparently said a few things in this lesson that Hermione didn't even know, and Lord, yeah, I know. Lord knows she's read all about unicorns, especially with our issues from book 1.
True.
So, like,
Do you think Grubbly Plank told them that if you drink the blood of a unicorn, you will live a halved life, a cursed life?
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say she left that out, but I'm not exactly thinking Hermione's volunteering. Not one of those put her hands up really quick volunteering.
This is why I was a weirdo in school.
No, it's a good lesson. It's a really good lesson, but yeah, I agree. Like, I'm reading this, and I'm like, Harry.
Yeah.
And I have had students try to pry information from me.
I'm sure.
Who are you asking me this? Like, no, I'm not giving you anything on this. Get out of here. Josh will know. So, I thought it was a really good lesson. So,
it's probably the only Care of Magical Creatures lesson we hear about that I would have wanted to be at, like, learn about.
I would have wanted the hippogriff lesson just in, like, my 5th year, not in my 3rd. But, whatever. In this class, we do get some info dropped. Because, obviously, Harry is more distracted on where is Hagrid than the actual class. Draco picks up on this very astutely. And
Are the Slytherins the only students getting the Daily Prophet?
apparently...
Like, what is that about? Sorry.
I mean, I'd assume... I don't know. I would assume I was going to make it a financial thing, like Draco would pay to have the Prophet. Some
Draco's
students...
father would pay to have the Prophet.
Fair. That is accurate. And most students probably don't care enough.
True. I wasn't reading the paper when I was 14.
No, I was reading, like, the Literal Marist
Do you think it's
newspaper.
actually... Well, yeah, I was reading that too. Do you think it's actually just that Lucius sends, like, cuts out articles that he knows Draco should know about and sends them in the Outpost? It's like, here, this will make your life fun for the next couple weeks.
Now I'm just imagining... Now I'm just imagining Lucius sitting at home with scissors and a glue stick.
Yes, this is amazing.
Making, like, little Harry Potter collages every time.
He's got a little scrapbook.
Do you think if he's cutting out an article, the picture of Harry in the article is, like, looking at the edge, like, concerned? Like, how does that work?
I think the picture of Harry is just staring up at him super sullenly and, like, mad.
Like, really?
Yeah.
You're gonna do this? Okay. I love the idea of Lucius collaging in his, like, spare time. It's great. Oh, that is awesome. Anyway. Draco pulls out this article from his pocket. And Harry and Ron and all of the Gryffindors, really, because they're all looking right over his shoulder as he's reading this article, called Dumbledore's Giant Mistake, which is, honestly, it's a really great title.
Yeah,
It'll catch your attention.
Yeah. It's witty.
But her writing is so evocative. But unless you want to call it her writing or her Quill's writing.
Well, I thought it was, I think it was you and Molly talking about her having to suck on it before, and is like that why
It like imbues some of her personality into the quill. Yes,
I thought that was I liked that point.
Yeah.
So basically saying I think it's more Rita than the quill.
Fair enough. I think it's like her personality and what she wants out of it, but the quill's doing like the wording of it specifically and like making
doing the thesaurus like word choice for her.
Fluffing it a little bit to make it sound a little bit snazzier, but yeah. In the article, I mean, it just rips Hagrid a new one, kind of throws him under the bus for the giantess mother, and goes into a little bit of the history about giants in the First Wizarding War and how Aurors had to take them down and how that was aggressive and all that. It also talks about, we get a little bit more on Scroots here.
I was going to say, this is actually probably one of her better articles because, I mean, really, it's all true. I was gonna say that to the end, but yes. Except for a little bit of, like, obviously fluffing it a bit to make it more scandalous. She's obviously making you skewed towards thinking Hagrid is bad.
100%. Yeah. But I agree. What she actually wrote is not technically false. Yeah. It's just putting out it's a very clear narrative that she's trying to write about Hagrid. Including quotes from students like Draco. Which I just find it hilarious that Draco's like sitting down for an interview for this whole thing. Before we get too far away from the Scroots, breeding of manticores and fire crabs.
Yeah, I don't know why he thought that was a good idea.
Even for Hagrid, that seems like it's just a really bad idea.
Yeah, he's just having some fun. He thought he was going to make like his own like mummy version of a dragon, you know, so he could be a mummy again.
Not... Did we have fire crabs in one of the Fantastic Beasts movies? Was that
the crab dance?
That was the dance, right? That was the fire crabs?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I was like hesitant on what the fire crabs was, but I think that
you're right.
The crab dance was it.
You are correct.
We do learn that his mother's name was Fridwulfa. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, because he didn't say that in the courtyard. He didn't name her.
No, he didn't.
Did she actually do like real research and track this down?
She must have. I mean, I feel like we would know he would have mentioned it at the end of the chapter somehow if that was not correct.
She did actual, like, real investigative reporting. Yeah. It's amazing. She is capable of it.
How do you think she found that out? Because obviously Fridwulfa must be... Well, she disappeared, right?
Yeah.
There's no, like, confirmation that she died.
Correct.
Hagrid's father is dead. Well, unless there's a birth certificate.
Could be a birth certificate, or there could be a Ministry of Magic documentation of like giants that actually survived that First Wizarding War, or a document
giants who had offspring,
something like that.
Like something the Ministry of Magic would be.
There might be some like actual documentation on that that she could have looked up. I suppose it's not like I can't imagine the Ministry would take care.
I don't like the idea that sort of stuff would be public record, though.
I don't think they care enough about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, that's what bothers me.
Yeah, I don't know. But regardless, we have on record, Fridwulfa is the name. Fridwulfa.
It's a great name.
It is. It's a really unique name that I'll probably forget soon because my memory. But it's a great trivia question.
Note to self, trivia question for Dan.
Yes. Sadly, that will probably get me in 6 months. But the article's really inflammatory. Also, I did like I didn't like it, but it was an interesting pull tying giants with Death Eaters and essentially drawing the conclusion that your mom was essentially
a supporter of,
and her drawing those two connections, which is a leap, and it's all circumstantial evidence.
But it was a good way to bring Harry back into the conversation.
And it was done smoothly. Yeah. And it was done, like, really, really well as far as the writing goes.
True.
So there was that interesting bit. So obviously, the Gryffindors are not loving that. Although Hermione is like, it's a really great lesson. And immediately she realizes that Harry is not about to listen to whatever she's going to say next.
Oh, Harry, I can just imagine the look on Harry's face. Like, I feel like it's a very me facial expression Harry's got going on. I'm all for it.
Yeah. She has to walk a very fine line after reading the article. She ends up reading the article herself, too. But she has to walk that fine line of, like, I really like that lesson. I really like that teacher. I support Hagrid, but also that was really good. Like, it's a fine line for her to walk. And she walks it very well, but...
Because she's Hermione.
Speaking of Hermione, her Yule Ball date got some attention in this chapter. He went for a dip in the lake. Their description of Krum is the same description we got earlier, except now it's more pronounced because you can like literally see him because he's not in like robes or anything like that. But they describe him as very skinny, but he must be extremely tough because he's diving into the lake in January in Scotland. Like, this cannot be a very warm lake.
No, I wouldn't think so.
So the very skinny but very tough kind of imagery behind Krum. And Hermione is like trying to defend him right off the bat, saying he's really nice. He's, quote, not at all what you'd expect from Durmstrang.
Yeah.
Which kind of sets me up well for a Krum conversation. Okay. Because I feel like Krum, maybe from the movies or from some of the descriptions even here in the books, you get a certain picture that Krum's a complete jock. In the movies, he's obviously more of a bulky character. Like, oh my gosh, literally fitting that jock persona, even though here he's very much not that. No. He's borderline unathletic, except when he's in the air. Right. So that's one hard difference that I think when you read these books, you kind of get a different sense of him. It knocked me back when I first read it. Like,
well, and I almost like, obviously the movies didn't have the opportunity to go into backgrounds of characters like the books could. But I feel like I like this version of Krum better. So, like, the skinny but tough descriptors, the first time where I was kind of like obviously parallels have been drawn between Krum and Harry because they're both great seekers. But this description means, to me, he's kind of physically like Harry as well. And so, I mean, we've talked extensively about the reason Harry is so skinny is because he was malnourished and mistreated as a child. Right. So then I started thinking, well, we don't really know much about Krum other than the fact that he is an international Quidditch star. What is life in Bulgaria for him actually like that he is skinny but tough? Mm-hmm. So then I did a little mini deep dive into like what the country of Bulgaria might have actually been like in the 90s.
Time out.
Yes.
Are you telling me that you, not me, did a deep dive into a foreign country?
Yes.
I am thrilled.
Yeah, I figured you'd be really proud of me.
I am extremely proud. I can't wait. What you got?
Well, so what I found out is that Bulgaria, it was originally part of the Ottoman Empire and broke from that. Mm-hmm. It allied with Germany in both of the world wars. Okay. And so after World War II ended, it ended up as part of kind of like the Soviet-led Eastern Bloc. It was socialist. The ruling party was the Communist Party. And that's what the country was until I think it was 1991 that they officially got their democratic constitution type thing in place.
Okay, so before
that would be like right at the beginning. So that would mean Krum's childhood, the same time Harry was living under cupboard, Krum was living in a socialist communist state.
Soviet-led communist, like. Yes.
And even today, this was a fun fact, in 2018, Bulgaria was ranked the most corrupt country in the EU. Apparently, widespread corruption is a major socioeconomic issue in the country.
Interesting.
So I feel like that puts a different spin on Krum. Is the reason he became such a seeker, is the reason he keeps going back to Quidditch because that's his way out. Yeah. Did he let Karkaroff bring him to be the participant, and did he want to be put into the Triwizard Tournament because that's another opportunity to put his name out there and get out of that situation?
That's part of the thing I wanted to talk about. First of all, hi to all of our listeners from Bulgaria.
Yeah, hi! I hope I am accurate. I'm sorry if I'm not.
Let us know your thoughts on Bulgaria in the Harry Potter universe. But that's a good point, and that's part of what makes Krum a very interesting character to me in these books, is because you get Karkaroff, who is pushing him. Mm-hmm. He's putting him out front every chance he gets. Putting him on a pedestal of sorts. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, do you want extra blankets? Do you want different clothes? Do you want food? Do you want food taken back to the ship? Like, giving him, do you want mead back at the ship? And then another student's like, I want mead. And he's like, get out of here! You know, like he puts Krum on this clearly exalted pedestal. Yeah. And is that because he just has a natural talent and he's like this prodigy from his region, I guess? Because I don't think Durmstrang is in Bulgaria. I think it's outside of Bulgaria. Probably, I personally think it might be in either the Alps, preferably around Germany. It's either there or it's up.
Wherever
far north.
It is, it's clearly,
cold.
Yeah.
That's what, and Hermione even says it here.
Colder than swimming in a Scottish lake in January.
I get the impression it's mountainous, and it's set on a mountain peak somewhere remote. So I think Alps, but I don't know. Not in Bulgaria. So is he this child prodigy in his region that he can just put forth and be like, see, I'm just as good as Dumbledore because I have this.
Yeah.
And then it's how much of this is Krum wanting to be put on Front Street, and how much of this is Karkaroff just putting him there and him having to roll with it?
Yeah.
I think Quidditch is his out, like you said.
I'm sure he takes pride in all his talent, and he should,
absolutely.
Obviously. But I don't think he wants to be up on that pedestal that Karkaroff keeps pushing him on. I think he just wants to prove himself.
I think it's quite admirable in Krum's position, because everything we've gotten from Krum in this book so far, he's been reserved. Mm-hmm. He hasn't wanted any of the attention, similar to Harry. Mm-hmm. So you're drawing Harry parallels in how they grew up.
Yes, I am just physical descriptors, like you said, both trying to avoid the limelight. To me, they're very similar personalities.
Yes, and I'm seeing it here. I'm like, for him to be so insanely famous and him having literal fan clubs following him around the entire school, he seems very I don't want that. I don't need that. I don't need any special treatment. Mm-hmm. I don't want anything extra that anybody else wouldn't.
He doesn't want anything that he hasn't earned, which is a very Harry thing.
Right. And I think that gets missed a lot on Krum.
Well, especially the way he's portrayed in the movies. Nothing against the actor. I think that was the decision Warner Brothers or whatever producers went with.
Sure. I mean, it's not like he's calling for more applause, but the actor does pull off the surly part about him quite well.
Definitely.
That he does do quite well.
That is true.
But I just think it's an interesting kind of portrayal of, and even if you look at the champions, at least right now, without going further down their storylines, you look at Harry, Krum, and Cedric, and their three defining characteristics are I'm not cool with all of the pomp and circumstance. I just want to go do my thing. Yeah. Which I think is really interesting. And Fleur, as far as we know, gets a lot of attention on her, but I don't think she's necessarily seeking that out. It's just part of her vibe too.
I think people put that onto her. I think fandom thinks of Flora as one who's attention seeking, but I think that's more basically I agree with you. I think she accepts it better than the three boys.
Yeah.
She's fine with boys fawning over her because she can recognize she's beautiful. To me, she's just a very mature, powerful young lady, but she's not going and seeking it out. No.
I guess the scene that always comes back to me is when Harry walks in that room for the first time after his name was called, and they're just all sitting there just chill.
Yeah.
Okay, we're put in the limelight again, and whatever, it's fine. We'll just roll with it, and they're just very chill. All of them are okay, here we are again. It's fine. Granted, they're all older and they have dealt with it probably longer.
They knew there was a possibility, they actually put their names into the Goblet of Fire.
So, do you think how much of it was Karkaroff wanting Krum specifically in the tournament, and how much do you think Krum really wanted to volunteer for it.
I think Karkaroff really, like, in Karkaroff's mind, he was making sure Krum was in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Krum knows that. Like, I think Krum is completely and totally aware of what Karkaroff is and how Karkaroff sees him as, like, his big show-off meal ticket. And I think Krum puts up with it because he wanted to participate in the Triwizard Tournament. But he wants to earn it. Like, again, I think he sees it as an opportunity to just continue bettering himself. I think it's 1,000 galleon prize money.
Sure. And it's, let's be real, if you're putting your name in, there's danger too. Like, you better be committed to this. Otherwise, it's a problem.
You have to have a bit of a love for adrenaline to be a Quidditch star,
Which I think he does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he definitely has that.
So I think he just puts up and allows Karkaroff to think whatever he wants, and he just goes about doing his own thing that he wants to do, and lets Karkaroff do his thing, because right now, their end goal is pretty much the same.
So that last line that I mentioned from Hermione about not at all what you'd expect from a Durmstrang.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we've talked about with Krum fits, and I think...
And we could talk about it, how it fits even more in the spoiler section, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can get back to that in the spoiler section, but I just love that idea that Krum almost wants to take a step away from Karkaroff and be like, I'm not that.
Because
I'm
again,
not
I
this.
think he sees Karkaroff for everything that Karkaroff is.
Yeah. Speaking about someone presenting himself as one thing and might not be that, let's step into the Three Broomsticks.
Ah, okay.
And on a Hogsmeade trip, you were wondering where I was going with that, and then it clicked.
Yes, very much. I know exactly where you're going with that.
All right. So Harry sees a ministry official having a conversation with some goblins in the corner, in a shadowy corner, which is always a good sign.
Yeah. Sounds totally legit.
And that ministry official is Ludo Bagman. So Bagman sees Harry, and that's his out of the conversation with the goblins. And he has a very interesting conversation with Harry. You can have your mention.
Bertha!
Bertha Jorkins is mentioned. And Ludo says he's finally actually sent people out to search for her.
No, he doesn't say finally. Harry has the mental thought of finally.
Oh, well, right. He mentions he's sent people out. And yes, Harry has the finally thought. We get a little Bertha Jorkins timeline as to what she was doing.
Because she's important.
We can get to that later. Yes. This might be it, guys. This might be Anna's big Bertha Jorkins moment.
It's my time to shine.
But yeah, so we get the Bertha Jorkins mention. We get a little discussion there. And then we also get that Barty Crouch Sr. has not been showing up for work at the ministry. And he's been sending instructions in by owl to Percy Weatherby.
Oh.
Yeah. I think the owl gets confused if it's like to Percy Weatherby, and then the owl's like, where the heck is this guy?
Not if it's Crouch's owl.
Fair enough. But yeah, so we also get a discussion. Ludo tries very hard to give Harry any help he possibly can on this tournament. And Harry's like, this just seems different from getting help from, like...
I have the exact line. He says accepting his assistance would feel somehow much more like cheating than asking advice from Ron, Hermione, or Sirius.
I agree. I
too.
feel like that would pretty strictly fall under, like, egregious cheating.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Considering it's the Minister of Sport and Games.
He's a judge in the tournament.
Right.
Yeah.
Seems like that'd be a problem.
I would also just like to take this opportunity that I've been having a real issue with everybody who's been saying that Cedric isn't getting help from any of his friends. Like, what friends don't help their friend who's in a life-endangering tournament? And also, the Puff is not the only one with integrity. Harry didn't cheat.
I think his friends would offer help. I think
Cedric Cedric is practicing with his friends the same. He was working with his friends practicing transforming the rock into Molly's beloved Odin. The same as Harry was working with Hermione.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll give you that. Sure. I think if and this is probably me projecting against Hufflepuffs more than helping the other Hufflepuff, but I'm Cedric, and if he is the best in his year because he's the true Hogwarts champion,
yeah.
so I mean, by definition, he would be the best of that. So I see his friends like offering help and like, oh, here's my 2 cents or whatever, and I can see him just going, okay, like that's
bad
nice.
Help, yeah.
Like listening to it, but like, I don't know if I'm ever really going to use that. But thanks, bud. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's just probably because he's being given.
Like if Hermione was the champion
advice.
and Ron's giving her advice on like.
Okay, but that's 2 different things. That's not the argument you've been making. On past episodes.
I'm just saying, like, he'd be like, oh, that's a really good idea, but
take bad advice.
I'm just saying. But speaking of that, Ludo's like, well, I'd really like to have a Hogwarts champion. And then Harry's like, well, have you given Cedric any advice? And he's like,
you go, Harry.
No. No, I haven't given him advice. Well, then, no, I'm not taking your advice. So, which, I mean, that's an important thing for 2 reasons. A, the idea that Cedric's not getting help from at least upper level people. But B, Ludo clearly has something on the side here.
Oh, yeah.
But
also, see, I think it does say something about Harry that he even had the thought of, like, well, are you offering the other Hogwarts champion help if that's your...
That's an adult answer.
Yeah.
That's a very much an adult answer when you're a 14-year-old kid.
Exactly.
That's like one of those...
It speaks to his character.
Yes. And I think that is one of the shining examples.
Yeah.
Him making a mature, reasonable statement back to an adult who's... That'd be hard for 14, having, like, the person who's running this event.
Ron would not have asked that question.
No, I don't think a lot of people would.
No, you're right. Yeah.
I don't think most would.
No,
so
you're right.
I mean, that's high level from Harry. We go from that highly charged scene to Ludo using that as an excuse to just walk away from the goblins.
Yeah, it was pretty smooth.
It was very smooth.
Didn't work for him.
No, not at all.
But it was smooth.
He's a very slick guy because then Rita Skeeter walks into the Three Broomsticks talking about just seeing Ludo walking by with goblins.
Can I just point out that her photographer's name is Bozo?
All I could think about was Bozo Buckets, which no one outside of Chicago is probably going to understand.
That's a Chicago thing?
I think it was, because with the WGN, well, I guess you could have seen it outside of Chicago.
I
WGN.
hope so.
Let us know. Does anybody know Bozo Buckets outside of Chicago? I don't know.
Twitter poll.
Did that's be a random Twitter poll. Did you ever go?
No.
See, I went once.
Bozo scared me. I liked Bozo Buckets, but Bozo himself scared me.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
You went?
I actually went to a actual show. Yeah, me and my cousins.
Can I look you up and find you on TV?
You probably could, yeah. No, I was there. Yeah.
Don't worry, guys. When I find it, I'll post it to the Instagram.
If you could find it, I'd be real impressed. That's like digging through some archives. Anyway, sidetrack. Yes, wow, we got a very big tangent. So, yes, Rita and her photographer Bozo walk into this Three Broomsticks talking about passing Ludo on the street and starting to come up with the beginnings of an article about goblins following him and such.
They just need to find a story to fit it.
Just need to find a story.
What a great journalist.
Oh, fantastic. Well, she alludes a little later that she's got a bunch of stuff on Ludo.
Yeah,
she's just waiting for like the right moment to let that one fly.
True.
But the trio, really the duo. It's really Harry and Hermione that actually confront Rita. Because Ron's like, don't do this. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Stop. But Harry starts off and goes off on her. Mm-hmm. In the middle of the Three Broomsticks, everyone's eyes are on this situation because this is a big deal. It's Harry Potter. And I guess the predominant author of the day who's...
goes after everyone. I think everybody knows not to get on her radar.
Yeah. So it's a big deal. And Ron, after this whole thing blows over, is like, that was a mistake. Like, she's already come after Harry. She's already come after Hagrid. She's gonna come after you next, Hermione. And Hermione is like vowing revenge.
Silly little girl, am I? I love that Harry compares it. The only time he's ever seen her this mad is the cockroach moment when she hits Malfoy.
Yeah.
And I would just like to point out both of those instances are her getting mad at somebody bad-mouthing Hagrid.
That's true. Which is interesting, because she's had some interesting thoughts on Hagrid in this chapter.
Right.
It's a really interesting kind of loop that she's in. Yeah. I mean, no one's ever doubting that she loves Hagrid.
No, of course not. But I'm just saying, like, she comes to Ron's defense, she comes to Harry's defense, but it's only Hagrid that I can think of that she gets this worked out coming to their defense.
I think Hagrid is this character. I mean, it's obvious with Harry, but I think it's true too with Ron and Hermione. Like, the joke kind of is, I think the joke is in the movie too, when they're in the Forbidden Forest randomly. I don't know why, it's an extra scene, but they're just calling themselves like misfits.
Oh yeah, I liked that. I'm not usually a big one for like the added in scenes in the movies, but that was a nice.
And then they start singing the school theme, which
Hogwarts,
is
Hogwarts,
right.
Hoggy Hogwarts. But also, if you think about it, Hagrid was all she had in third year.
Yeah. So they clearly grew very, very close. Yeah. And Hagrid would come to her defense a lot, like, guys, you have no idea what she's going through. You
I
really
wonder
need
if that bond is even really more special for the two of them than the Hagrid-Harry bond, but we just don't get it front and center as much because, like you point out, the series is from Harry's point of view.
Well, I mean, you see it come back around now because when they go to Hagrid's toward the end of this chapter, who's the one banging on the door saying, like, we don't care? Mm-hmm. It's Hermione. Yep. And Hermione's, like, leading this charge, like, literally. I mean, she is bolting.
I can just picture the hair.
Right.
It's flowing.
So she leads them there, and it's Albus Dumbledore opening the door, which that stopped her in her tracks. And then Albus turns to Hagrid, who's, like, in a real state at the table.
Yeah, it's so sad.
And Albus is like, this is literally what I've been telling you. Mm-hmm. Like, I have gotten letters from parents.
Oh, the letters from the parents almost brought tears to my eyes. That was such a nice moment.
Working at a school, letters from parents are almost never a good thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there have been letters that were not positive in Hagrid's, on Hagrid's side, but Albus is like, no, there's a lot of parents that remember you from their time here that's like, no, he's great. Like, this is ridiculous. And then Albus is kind of sharp at points, and like, if you're looking for universal love,
I liked that line.
You're going to be in here forever, because I get like a letter every single day saying I should stop this or do this or fire Trelawney or fire you or fire like whatever, fire myself, whatever.
Yeah. And
it's like, if I listened to, every single negative letter, I'd never leave my office. And it's this whole conversation's really introspective on self-acceptance, mm-hmm. which I think is really deep. I had to quote this directly. I don't know if you took this quote right out of the book, but I loved it. Harry says, we don't care what, this is paraphrasing, Harry says, we don't care what that cow has to say, or something like that.
And I agree. Oh, yeah.
And he's like, oh, sorry, Professor. And Dumbledore goes, quote, I have gone temporarily deaf and haven't any idea what you said. What a great thing from
it's such
Albus.
A Dumbledore thing to
It's
say.
so good.
Yeah.
I have gone temporarily deaf and haven't any idea what you said. Great.
This whole scene, I feel like Dumbledore, rightly so, gets a lot of flack from the fandom and we've given him his share of flack for, like, choices he's made.
A lot of different things.
Yeah, how Hogwarts is run. But this right here, like, brings you back to, like, the main point of, like, why Dumbledore is so lovable.
Yeah. Yeah, it endears you pretty hard to the character of Albus Dumbledore. But these are the quotes that get you. Mm-hmm. He also says, is this the first time we hear that he has a brother? I can't remember any time earlier that he says he has a brother.
I'm not sure.
But he mentions that his brother Aberforth had inappropriate charms on a goat. Oh, yeah. And he's, quote, not entirely sure that he can read the articles about him anyway.
That was just a brotherly snark. That was ridiculous. It was Jude Law Dumbledore.
It was totally Jude Law Dumbledore. 100%. I can't see Richard Harris having that quip.
No.
But, well, I take that back. I could see Richard Harris. I can't see Richard Harris as Dumbledore doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Fair enough. Because Richard Harris was a character. You should see him behind the scenes.
Yes, he was.
Great stuff. Anyway, so I think the whole thing is a commentary on, like, self-acceptance really quick.
Yeah.
And
when Hagrid starts encouraging Harry to, like, win the tournament and, like, show the world that, like, you don't have to be the pure blood, that, like, you can do it, you did it. Yeah, like you said, it was just a really beautiful, lovely moment about self-acceptance and...
Well, we talked about Krum and Harry having similarities. Hagrid brings up a bunch of similarities between him and Harry, which was, I think, a really meaningful kind of moment between them, which was good. So there's all of that. And after Hagrid gets done with telling him that, like, roundabout pep talk of, like, you need to go win this because I want you to win it so bad, he's like, shoot, I really need to think about this egg. Who he's been lying to everyone about.
Well, he even says lying to Hagrid hit different. Well, and so now he's willing to put aside his pride.
He's lied to 3 people in this chapter at the beginning, middle, and end.
Like Hermione, the biggest lie to Hagrid too. It, like, starts off with Hermione, like, I think I'm getting there. I think I'm doing okay. Little Bagman, yeah, I'm almost there. Hagrid, I'm doing great. Great, Hagrid.
Yeah. So he's like, all right, I should probably try Cedric's hint. Because he's been specifically ignoring it this entire time because it's Cedric.
I would do that if I were Harry. Like, that's just my personality. I can feel myself do that. I would like to say, now, I would be mature enough to take the hint. And I was 14 and I saw the guy. I would get there.
I would get here quicker than he did. But, no, I think I would have. But I do understand his purview of, oh, he's dating the girl that I like. Forget him. Like, I understand it. I would have still, man, this is life or death tournament. Like, figure this out.
5 weeks. It's fine.
He had, like, 3 months. This is like, what if Hermione was right and this took, like, weeks to figure out?
Not much time. It's fine.
Anyway. So he's now renewing his effort to go and try Cedric's hint and see if he can figure it out. That ends the chapter, and we are going to get to the spoiler section where we got a bunch going on. So we'll be right back here with the spoiler section.
Kill the stag!
All right, so we're back with the spoiler section of Chapter 24, Rita Skeeter's Scoop. So, we did have a Krum thing to bring up. Obviously, Krum goes beyond Book 4, and we do see him again in Book 7. And so he's had a little bit more of a character arc, totally. And obviously, I brought up in one of our Quidditch World Cup chapters that he ends up winning a Quidditch World Cup later on in his Quidditch career. But there's something different, and this is, I guess, kind of what I was somewhat alluding to as well in my non-spoiler thoughts, was there's something different about Krum as a Durmstrang student and a Durmstrang regional, whatever, resident than maybe some most in his party or in his group. And he's talked about, other people have talked about, and him have talked about dark magic being like a cloud over Durmstrang, and obviously his headmaster is a former Death Eater. Mm-hmm. So there's that cloud hanging over him, and he seems to have miraculously gotten away from that.
Yep.
And with your non-spoiler delve into Bulgaria, I wanted to ask you, and I'm just coming up with this question now, so apologies.
Okay.
But with your allusions to World War I and World War II Bulgaria, and we know that World War I and World War II is kind of alluded to in the Grindelwald and First Wizarding War kind of mashups, give or take. Do you think Bulgaria is struggling from some of the Wizarding Wars that have happened, and he's grown up in a world where dark wizards did a lot of damage?
I do.
And he's rebuffing that him personally?
And that's why, that was kind of where my mind was going with my saying I see a lot of similarities between him and Harry in those formative years is, I think, I mean, who knows, for all we know, I mean, how many men in that region avoided having to fight in the world wars? Maybe he too, like Harry, grew up without parents. Maybe he grew up without a father, at least, who maybe had to fight in the war. Like you said, all the dark magic in the 7th book, since we're in the spoiler section, he is the one who tells Harry about that being Grindelwald's symbol. We know it's not just Grindelwald's, but that's how he thinks of it. So clearly he's been affected by Grindelwald and dark magic. And so, yeah, I think, and that's why I was kind of saying in the non-spoiler section, maybe he uses Quidditch and the tournament as his opportunity to remove himself from this environment that, just like the Dursleys caused Harry so much pain, physical, mental, all of it, maybe it caused Krum that same pain. And Harry's way out was just getting his wizarding letter and getting him out of the Dursleys' home. Krum found Quidditch to get him out of a potential, who knows, environment in his home country.
Yeah. My point in all of this is, as we've stated on many different occasions on this podcast, like, there's more to this character than just the cursory glance. Like, I think there's a lot going on with Krum that never really ever gets talked about.
Which, of course, because he's such a side character. Like, us delving this deeply into him. Who knows if J.K. delved this deeply into him. But especially, like you said, now with all of that era's wars being brought into focus in the Fantastic Beasts movie, you just kind of wonder, like, the number of people it had to have affected in all of Europe.
And we've kind of talked about, like, well, how big is Voldy's reach? Like, is he just a United Kingdom on Ireland thing?
I think he is.
Versus now Grindelwald, if you're going from the Fantastic Beasts movies alone, he clearly was a global force, because North America was talking about him, South America was talking about him. He presented himself in a global way because he was literally, I think, wasn't he running for, like, the head of the wizarding?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
So, yeah, he was well, this, I guess, recontextualizes if we think about it, because we talked about what's more dangerous, like Grindelwald or Voldy. There's a lot to Krum, and there's a lot to a bunch of these characters, and we're trying to highlight as much of it as we possibly can.
And you should probably cut me off, because I could talk about World War II all night.
She is a history buff, so you did like my Teddy Roosevelt poll. Not that that was World War II, but...
Very nice.
Thank you. Well, this is a chance for you. Are you ready to talk some Bertha Jorkins?
I don't know. Are you ready for me to talk some Bertha Jorkins?
So let me prep this conversation a little bit.
I'm a little nervous because he's like kind of talked me up a bit with this.
So back in the day, this was pre-pandemic, by a couple of years even.
I was going to say, it's been a minute.
I don't know if you still have the brackets
somewhere.
But Anna and I decided to do brackets. It was around this time. It was around March Madness here in the United States, college basketball. And I love me some brackets. So we decided to do a Harry Potter style bracket where the criteria for it was based, if I'm incorrect, correct me, but it was based on importance in the series.
Correct.
So we came up with 64 characters, and we agreed on the 64. And you did fight for Bertha Jorkins to be on this list.
I fought so hard.
Yes.
So hard.
So she got Bertha on the list, and then the bracket. And we made the bracket.
We still haven't
finished it.
We finished like one little corner.
We finished one corner, which Bertha happened to be in. Yes. And you had her going, I think this is what I took exception to, is you had her going fairly deep into this thing over some other characters that were pretty big rollers in this whole thing, high rollers. So that's the prelude. And now I present Anna.
It all starts, she is first mentioned in the very first chapter of Riddle House.
Yes.
And Pettigrew is trying to tell Voldemort that he is worried that her murder could have far-reaching ripples. And, like, what if people start coming to look for her and this and that? And I think Pettigrew is right to be worried about that. Voldemort himself even says He does not deny that her information was invaluable. Quote, without it, I could never have formed our plan. Literally page 11 of this book. All right, that's how early we're talking about Bertha being important.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's not, to your point, she's not just a witch. She's a witch that works in this specific part of the ministry.
Exactly. Without her, Voldemort does not find out about the Triwizard Tournament.
Correct.
He doesn't find out that Moody's going to be a professor at Hogwarts for the year. She's the one who tells him about that. And he does not find out our number one favorite character of the novel, Barty Crouch Jr., is alive and still loyal. Without those things, maybe Voldemort doesn't... He fully says he could never have formed his plan. Maybe he doesn't come back the way that he comes back at the end of this book. And if he doesn't come back with Harry in the cemetery using flesh, blood, and bone, does Harry survive the Horcrux being destroyed? There's that whole... And then, or you could even go a whole nother route. What if, after all of Voldemort's, like, delving for information, all that stuff, what if she escapes? And warns everyone. And again, then Voldemort does not come back in this particular manner. It could completely change the whole route of the series we know and love.
I will say that they did luck out on the type of individual that Bertha is.
Obviously.
Because it's Sirius.
It's all very fortuitous.
Yeah, Sirius puts it as she's a bad combination of, like, knowledgeable but stupid. Like, she knows things, but she's really an idiot. I get the impression
she's kind of a ditz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they got lucky because even if she gets away somehow, some way, Wormtail screws up, like, I don't know how much damage she can really do, because clearly...
She personally can do, but people can just continue delving into her mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Ludo Bagman or anyone really at the Ministry seems to care all that much about Bertha Jorkins. So...
But that doesn't mean she's not important. They should care. Because, again, literally, without her, the rest of this book does not happen.
Well, the great thing about Voldy is he's working completely in the shadows. Like, he's working... His plan is so, like, dark ops.
Right, but
that they're not even considering that.
Centers around Crouch. And without Bertha, Crouch continues to just stay under the care of Winky.
Yeah.
No dustbins for you to make fun of.
I concede her importance in the series.
More important than Dolohov, who literally the only thing we know about him is that he kills Remus and Tonks. Which I'm not saying that that's not a heartbreaker. I know, but Remus and Tonks dying does not have an effect on anything to do with Voldemort.
We gotta pull out this bracket of yours at some point. And A, finish them. But B, like, kind of look over the Bertha Jorkins trajectory in these brackets and see where she ends up.
She didn't make it far.
You saying that this might have rewritten the books as we know it, have things gone a little bit differently, brings into question a couple of things that Aaron and I talked about recently, and this kind of gets into your patented Anna rebuttal section.
Oh, yay.
But one of the thoughts that we talked about was, could Harry have died naturally? Because he's a Horcrux?
That was an interesting conversation you guys had. I agree with you. Obviously, the Basilisk could have killed him.
Right.
So the thought I had as I was listening to you guys talk about it, at first I was like, oh my goodness, I wonder if he could have. But then I was brought back to interaction between Snivellus and Harry. Talking about in Fury. And I had the thought that maybe Harry's essence could die, but that the Horcrux would keep his body at least animated.
Okay, so you are going with our Walking Dead Harry Potter example.
Yeah, yes I am.
As jacked up as that sounds.
And he would not be transparent.
Interesting. Okay, wow. We have another vote for Walking Dead Harry Potter.
Yeah, I think so.
Wouldn't that be a crazy multiversal thing? I need to be part of whatever creative team at Warner Brothers, and we could start coming up with the multiverse of Harry Potter.
So that's what I'm now imagining.
I like it.
For
Well,
my Harry as a zombie image.
Well, there you go. I mean, I thought that was a very interesting thought that I hadn't thought of before. Anything else you got from some of those other episodes, Aaron's or otherwise?
Well, if we're keeping going with Aaron's episodes, his Unexpected Task episode was the only thing in my rebuttal section that I kind of took issues with a few things he said.
Okay.
And to me, like, they were two separate conversations, but in my mind, they were kind of, like, leading to the similar points. And the one was talking about Ginny. He kept saying that, like, he didn't understand why Ginny didn't, like, hang around Ron as much as she possibly could, so that she was just, like, there for Harry to ask to the Yule Ball. Because, you know, that's all women do. It's all we have time for is to sit around and wait for that man to ask us to the ball. And then he also was talking about Fleur and Cedric were talking when Ron, you know, had his shouting moment. And you guys were talking about, like, was Fleur trying to get Cedric to ask her to the Yule Ball? And I just was kind of getting some not great vibes from those talks being had.
Yeah.
Had I been on the episode, I would have poked at him a little bit.
Fair enough. I agree with the Ginny thing.
Wait, to your credit, you brought it up. Thank you.
I get his point in that obviously she has a crush on Harry.
Right.
So, I mean, the idea of her being like, oh, maybe this is my shot. And like he said, the in with, you know, my brother is his best friend. Like, maybe I have a shot here. I get that. But, you know, we don't see her for large chunks of this series.
She's out there living her life.
Right, because she's having her own experience through, which would be, and I'm sure it's done 1,000 times over, but like a Ginny fan fiction of just, it's her through the books. I'm sure it's been done 1,000.
It's probably great.
So yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Also, you know, it seems like Neville was on his game here, because
Neville was so on. I'm so proud of Neville.
Because he asks Hermione, he recognizes that Hermione, in fact, is a girl, so that's a start, and then goes to Ginny.
Well, and the reasons he had for asking
Adorable.
Hermione were so sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, Neville.
No, Neville was great. So Neville was on the ball. But to your other point, I don't know if Fleur was turning on the charm, quote unquote, to ask Cedric. I do think, and this, you're going to come at me with like, this is Cedric bias. It's not. It's just a fact. Who would be a better date? Cedric Diggory or Roger Davies? Like,
I don't know.
Roger Davies.
I don't know much about Roger Davies. He's a Ravenclaw. He can't be an idiot. He
was rough in that Yule Ball chapter of like fawning, open mouth, gawking at her the entire time. And to be fair, like,
I just don't know where this came from. Like, a young man and young lady are having a conversation, so the only possible conclusion to be drawn is that it's a hope for... Like, I just have never before gotten these vibes between Cedric and Fleur.
Oh, I've never gotten them either. I think Fleur would think Cedric would be a worthy date to have, in that he's also a champion. And he's not
fawning over her, which maybe for her would be refreshing.
Exactly.
Same as probably for Bill.
Exactly. That's the point, I think, is that, oh, you're not coming after me, like...
But maybe that's even more of a point that she probably doesn't have very many male friends because they're always fawning over her. Probably. So maybe it's kind of like a weight off of her shoulders to just be able to have...
a guy to talk to that's not gonna, like, be after her for a date or anything.
Some guy perspective without it having to be romantic.
Sure. I mean... And, you know, you could say the same thing about Krum, too. So, okay. So we had this, like, Krum-Harry connection. And we've talked about the three boys, specifically. The three boys not really being affected by the whole, like, pomp and circumstance of this whole thing. And they're also, if you look at the three boys, they're not really, like, knocked head over heels for Fleur. Like, none of them.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's interesting, isn't it? A little bit? And I think it speaks to the character of all three of them that, like, they're not... I guess it's speaks to the strength of their will that none of the three are, like, stricken by the villainess of Floor.
I think what's nice about the three of them that speaks to their characters is that they see that she's more than the Vila in her. Like, I think it's in Half-Blood Prince, An Excess of Phlegm. I think Ginny and Hermione are kind of, like, complaining about her a little bit.
Sure.
And Harry makes a point of, like, her having to do all the different magic and the tasks for, like, clearly there's more to her than that. And he shuts the conversation down real quickly because I think he gets glare from Ginny. But, like, I think that's basically what all three of Cedric, Krum, and Harry see is that, like, there's more to Floor than the beauty.
I think Krum and Cedric, as the other two true champions, know that, like, okay, if...
Well, clearly Krum and Floor kept a relationship going since he was invited to the wedding.
Right. And it's like, okay, she's a champion. She's a true champion. She's supposed to be here. Yeah. If she's supposed to be here, she must have some innate...
They don't treat her like the token female.
And I think on our poll that we had, a lot of people gave Floor a lot of credit as, you know, their favorite champion or whatever. And I wonder how much of that is based on this book or how much of it's based on later stuff.
She's got some great moments in later stuff, yeah. She has some good moments in this one with her little
later
sister.
in this book, yeah, that we haven't gotten to yet. We're coming up to quickly. Mm-hmm. And her book 7 stuff is good. And yeah, it's just kind of interesting to... the more I think about it, the more comparisons I'm drawing between all 4 of the champions, of their just innate who they are.
Well, maybe that's the magic of the goblet. Like, maybe whoever made the goblet and enchanted the goblet to pull the champions' names, maybe it was given certain criteria. I'm kind of assuming it's similar to the Sorting Hat, where, like, whoever enchanted it, you know, like, obviously Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, and Hufflepuff told them, like, these are the characteristics to look for my house. Sure. So I think the goblet was probably told to look for...
So strong will has to be part of it, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that.
So, but anyway, wow, we just went on another long tangent. Do you have anything else from...
Okay, I can make them real fast. First, I freaking love the magical Tinder idea. I tried so hard to come up with a good name for it, and all I could come up with MuggleNet already used, and it was Swish and Click.
I liked Elizabeth came up with Charmed.
Oh, that's sweet. I like that.
It's a good one.
Good. But yeah, I liked that. I want to go on record that I agree with Jen in that Voldemort was scared of Dumbledore, and also that Snape is not redeemable. I'm on board with her for both of those.
Talking about characters that deserve, like, one single episode. The Snape, not even Snape, just Snape redemption can be like a whole thing.
Yeah, I don't think he's redeemable at all. I always believed he was loyal and that he was, you know, gonna stay on...
I'm actually split on that, which we can get to on a later episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we don't have to, like, go in depth about it. I just wanted to be on record as agreeing with her.
Okay.
And then I just have to put out there, I have a whole new headcanon from the conversation that you and Aaron had about the 2nd year and the 5th year, who asked Harry to the Yule Ball. In Half-Blood Prince, we meet the very interesting character of Romilda Vane.
We do.
We find out in Harry's 6th year, she is in her 4th year. Which means in Harry's 4th year, she was in her 2nd year. I totally think Romilda Vane is the 2nd year who asked Harry to the Yule Ball.
Wouldn't that be something? I mean, it would track that she would have the guts to do it. As a 2nd year, as a 12-year-old.
Exactly. And Harry's not going to remember her.
Probably not. No.
It's totally my new headcanon. It makes me really happy.
I would make that my new headcanon too. I would totally buy into that.
It was so great.
I would totally buy that.
Yes.
Look at us agreeing on something. It's great.
We did pretty good this episode.
We did pretty good. We didn't go as hard into, Cedric and some of the other things, because we have butted heads on that before.
That's true.
One
of the previous episodes, you actually were actively making me dislike him more when you were spouting your love of him, but that's okay.
But that's us, because...
That it is.
I'm pretty sure if I picked an infallible argument that's perfect, but it was me and I spotted it mostly, you would find some flaw in it and come at me hard. So, I mean, that's why Josh likes you as a guest.
You're welcome.
Let's end on an agreement of Romilda Vane as a second year. And we will end it here. Thank you everybody for listening, and from all of our countries around the world. Let us know what you thought of this episode with likes, comments, reviews on where you're listening. That really helps us out. On Spotify, I know a lot of our listeners go through Spotify, so give us that review, give us a comment and a like. That would be really, really important. So thank you all, and we will be back next week with a very interesting episode, Chapter 25, The Egg in the Eye. So we will be back then. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @HogwartsAPod.